listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. In this episode, I want to talk to you about diversifying when it comes to TpT, moving beyond that and having other streams of income, which can be a really, really wise decision. But I will start off the episode by talking about when it's right for you to do this, because it's not one of those things that everybody listening or any seller at any point in their journey should be doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that first. Once we get through that, when you know that this is for you, I want to talk a little bit about the ways you can diversify some of your options and some of the things that I've done, some of the things I recommend, that kind of thing. But yeah, this is going to be beyond selling on TpT. Other things you can do though to make money in your business. Okay, so first up, I'm going to talk about how this might not be for everyone. If you are a new seller on TpT, so you've been selling like a year or something, or if you were a kind of smaller side hustle kind of seller, so this is something that, TpT is something you dedicate like an hour or two here or there, you've got really small store, not many products, maybe you're only making like less than $100 a month or a couple of $100 a month, like, I don't know, you're kind of just starting out or things are on the small side. I don't recommend moving on to other ventures yet because you haven't quite mastered the first one. And so if you start setting up your own website or designing a course or doing all these other different things, joining other platforms, you're taking away time from TpT. And at that point in your journey, when you're quite new or you're on the smaller side of selling, that's a really bad decision because you're going to take away time and energy from growing your store. And so you need to be creating products and optimizing them and kind of building the foundation of your business basically. And you're going to distract yourself by putting time and money into something else. And you're kind of basically spreading yourself too thin. The quote that I really like, moving an inch in a million directions instead of a mile in one direction. So you just want to be really, really mindful of that. I know that hearing about, TpT and what if it doesn't work out and what if it one day shuts down or the sales dwindle, like you need to have a backup, don't put all your eggs in one basket, blah, blah, blah. I know that can be very scary to hear, but truth be told, if you are at that newer, smaller point, it doesn't really matter because presumably you're not relying on it for any substantial income. So it's purely a side hustle for you. Maybe you're a full-time teacher and you make a couple of $100s from TpT. And if TpT disappeared tomorrow, that wouldn't really drastically affect your life. It'd be a bit of a bummer, but financially wouldn't affect you. So you don't need to panic about diversifying. That's the truth of it. Now, this episode is much more geared towards seasoned, experienced, veteran sort of sellers. And so, especially if you're earning, thousands of dollars a month, tens of thousands of dollars a month, that kind of thing, if you've been selling for many, many years, but specifically if you are full-time TpT, or if you are kind of maybe you're a part-time teacher, but you're putting in part-time TpT and you're putting in quite a lot of hours, like 20 hours a week or something like that, like you're substantially putting time into it, especially though if you're relying on TpT for your income. And should TpT shut down tomorrow, you'd be panicking about how to pay your rent or your mortgage, or, you're the breadwinner or the provider, or financially that would really hit you. And so I think that's the question to kind of ask yourself. If sales on TpT came to a grinding halt or they really slowed down and you were down 30, 40, 50% or something like that, is that going to literally, really negatively affect your life financially? Then yeah, this episode is more for you, I think. So I hope that's kind of clarified. I just don't want people to be jumping on starting an Etsy store or their own website when they're not ready for it. So this is much more for, when you're ready. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about who it's for. Presuming now that you are listening because you're the right kind of person, there's a lot of ways to diversify in the TpT world, and I'm just going to list a bunch of them for you, just so you have a few ideas in case you were thinking about it. So some people start selling a course for teachers. Some people sell a membership using the products in their store. Other people sell the same resources on TpT but on their own website. So they create a WooCommerce or Shopify shop. Some people sell on other marketplaces, whether that's Etsy or Classful, Made by Teachers, TES. There's a bunch of them out there basically. with, varying levels of how successful or big they are, basically. Another thing that I've heard of more recently is this Amazon KDP thing. So Kindle Direct Publishing, like a POD, which is the print on demand books. And so some people are doing that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options here. Okay, so the other thing you can do in terms of diversifying beyond things to do with your resources, so you're not putting your resources on a marketplace or a website or a membership or whatever, is you can do some things with your time or your marketing. So first up with your time, you could look into doing some VA stuff, so becoming a virtual assistant or freelancer in some way. Perhaps you're actually really, really great at product photography in your store, like you have a really great skill for it. And you could offer that as a service and join the TpT VA Finder Facebook group. And there's even one that's more of a mastermind for when you're a VA. And you could look into just offering the services every month, just a couple of clients or something, just to kind of bring you some extra cash in, take a few photos, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's so many other options in terms of what you offer. Your thing might be that you might proofread for people or help them with, something to do with their listings. Like maybe you've got a great eye for graphic design and you could make covers for people or previews or something. I mean, marketing wise, I'm sure there's things there. Like maybe you're really great with social media, so you'll help someone out with their social media account. I don't know. There's a lot of options if you're into certain areas of your business, like you're really good at certain things. Beyond just doing it for your own store, you could get paid to do it for other sellers. Now, the downside with this, of course, is that you are still reliant on TpT because, serving TpT sellers is in some way directly kind of relying on TpT. And of course, if TpT sales were dwindling and the site was kind of going downhill and people were hiring less, then there's less need for that. So that, that's got its risks too, but definitely an option in terms of your time. And to make that less risky, you could offer VA services outside of the TpT world. So if you were really great with Pinterest, you want to become a Pinterest manager, and you could offer that beyond TpT. So, you could make it less risky however you want to do it. There's a lot of options there. The other thing you can do with your time and maybe your sort of expertise or knowledge is you could, and I know people have like created like seminars and webinars and conferences and things. Like I know there was one of my previous podcast guests, Savannah Campbell. She runs like a Science of Reading one, I think, like a conference one. Like she organized it, or she's one of the organizers or something like that. And so you could organize a conference, or you could be a speaker at a conference. And there's obviously ones that are in person, but there's also like these kind of online ones, where you just record the video and you're like supporting people with teaching a certain concept and you get paid for that, or you get commissions for that. So, that's kind of something you can do with your time and expert knowledge too. And then earlier I mentioned the other thing was marketing. And so if you have like a really thriving social media, like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook page, whatever, or a blog or YouTube channel or podcast, something like that, is you could do affiliate marketing and make commissions there. So for example, if you have a really successful blog, you could be putting in affiliate links there so that you're making a little bit of money from those clicks. You could obviously put links in your Instagram stories. You could become an Amazon affiliate and, share things beyond TpT stuff. It could actually be like, hey, this is fashion, this is home and decor and whatever. Like there's a few people I follow that are teachers and teachergrammers, and they actually make money from affiliate links that are outside of the whole teaching sphere. But yeah, that's always an option if you're a social media kind of person, is commissions and affiliate kind of things like that. Sponsored posts, obviously, and those kind of paid opportunities on social media. If you've got like a big Instagram account, you could look into doing sponsored content so that you're making a little bit of cash that way through your marketing. That's always an option too. If you have like a YouTube channel or a podcast or something, and you could have ads running or paid promotion sponsors, sponsorships and links, and you're saying, hey, this episode is sponsored by, and you get paid in certain ways in that sense. So like, depending on your marketing platform, there might be a way for you to basically make money. And I don't know, I'm sure there might be some things I've forgotten there. I'm hoping I haven't forgotten any, but yeah, those are kind of the options that are just like bringing in a little bit of extra revenue beyond just your TpT sales. So those are some ideas too. So I think one of the things people often are drawn to is selling on other marketplaces because it feels like the simplest kind of option. A lot of these things might have a joining fee or, like a TpT's commission, that kind of thing. There might be some cost, but for the most part, you've got these resources anyway. You're just throwing them up in a different place, making listings on another website essentially. So it can kind of feel like an easy thing to do. The downside, I think, is that a lot of these marketplaces just really cannot compete with TpT. And so you might get, here and there a few little sales, but it's not always going to get anywhere close to matching what you make on TpT. It's just not going to have that same profitability. So you've got to really weigh up your options there. And I think that's because when you're doing one thing, if you were listing like one resource, fine, but you've got 300 resources in your store and you're going to sit there and list all of those in other marketplaces, like that can easily spiral into just hundreds and hundreds of hours of your time where you're trying to upload and maintain all these different marketplaces. That can be, just like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, you're spreading yourself quite thin, and that has its risks. I think if you are going to look into selling on other marketplaces, you would need to take the time to first do the research. There's actually, I think, a Facebook group you can join, and I can't remember what it's called. I think it's teacher sellers on marketplaces or something. But you could, look into that group. You could ask in other generic TpT seller groups about what platforms people are on. So you can make like a comprehensive list. Okay, here's my options I'm looking into. I know there's ones like for Australians, for example. So there's different options based on where you live and stuff. And then you could ask, okay, which one have you found the most profitable? Which one do you find the easiest to use? Which one has the best commissions? Like, you might just not spend a crazy amount of time, just do a little bit of research into finding the best one. And maybe you would just start with one. And so you would put your, eggs into one other basket. Maybe you just sell in one other place. And you don't commit to joining a bunch of marketplaces because that's going to overwhelm you. And my other little tip here would be, I think, you just put a few of your best sellers. And so like you're kind of dipping your toes in and saying, I'm going to try this and I want to see how it goes. And it's not a big investment if you don't put too much time in, if you don't commit to putting your whole store on there, because you don't want to realize, after a few months, okay, wait, this isn't really bringing me any money. This was a waste of time. And that's fine if you spent a little bit of time and you put on 10 or 20 resources. It's completely different if you spent weeks and weeks uploading your whole store to learn that it was all for nothing. So I think in terms of being mindful of risk, I would not put in a crazy amount of time to it. And I would probably, maybe you could even hire someone, that might be great, so you can focus on the important stuff. But I would probably just put up the things that you have faith in. So these are the resources that you know are really, really great. Resources that you know are doing well on TpT, which is an indicator they may do well on other marketplaces. These are your best selling resources. So don't waste your time picking up those things that aren't doing well on TpT. They're probably not going to suddenly magically do well somewhere else. So just stick to maybe your best sellers. That would be my tip for marketplaces. And that tip that I've just shared is also applicable to your website shop. And so this is something that I have much more experience in. I've not been one to go onto a lot of other marketplaces. I've actually tried Etsy, but I don't think that's quite the same. It's not all about printable teacher resources, so the audience just isn't the same. But I have set up my own WooCommerce or my own website. And that's pretty similar to being on another marketplace. It's just, because you're basically just putting your resources on a website, but obviously different in a lot of other ways. But it has that same thing, I think, of you want to make sure you're maybe starting off with your best sellers, not going crazy. I personally didn't put on my entire store. At the time, I had 400 and something resources, which felt like a lot. And a lot of them were in a sort of, a subject area that I really didn't sell much of on TpT. It's very competitive. I just thought, I'm not even going to bother putting any of those on. And I kind of stuck to a much smaller number and, a lot more of the kind of relevant newer niche that I was in, but also all my best sellers, my higher earners, that kind of thing. So I think at the moment I've got about, 250 or so resources on my website shop compared to my store, which is around the 400 and something mark. So I cut back a little bit. If I was being honest and I was to do it again, I think I might even cut back a little bit more. Maybe I would have just stuck to literally like the top 20% of my store, the things that bring me the most money, maybe, because it's not always just about the uploading process. With this diversifying, it's the maintenance too. And I did record an episode on this, so you can check that out. In the past, I talked about selling my own store, but it can be an insane workload. Every time you create a product or do an update on TpT, you've got to remember to go and do it on your website. And, obviously you're investing money into hiring someone or building a website. There's money too. It's money and it's time. It can be a really big, scary thing. I don't go around telling people to start websites or WooCommerce shops. I really don't go around recommending that to people, especially when they're a smaller seller. It can be a huge, huge undertaking. But it was the choice that I went with over other marketplaces, because I do think on some level, I just like the idea of making more money when I do sell something. And, TpT's commission, they just take so much money from us. And that's fine because they do a lot for us, all that tech support and IT stuff. And they obviously have a lot of traffic and everything. So I don't, begrudge the commission, but it's just nice to have a way to get my resources selling without having to hand over that 20%. And that's kind of cool. So I think that's kind of what drew me to the website. And I think having full control over it. And the final thing as well, I think, is feeling like it, assuming that I continue to pay my hosting fees, like it will always be there. And the risky nature of TpT is it's someone else's platform. And so you can go to another platform, but then really the risk has just been transferred there because it's the same thing. A lot of these marketplaces, could easily just be shut down. And some of them have done in the past. I've heard of ones in the past that have been. And I think that's because they're trying to compete with TpT and they just can't. So anyway, in terms of what I guess I felt was like a less risky, slightly more profitable thing was I just wanted to have my own website, but the initial costs of setting that up, not cheap. So if you're looking at being really financially savvy, it might make more sense for you to start a store on another marketplace versus Shopify or WooCommerce because it might work out cheaper. So that's fine. You make that decision yourself, but I just wanted to give a little bit of insight into what I've done with it. And as a little current update, because in case you listened to my last episode, I talked about selling on my own shop and how it wasn't really crazy profitable. Thought I just would share how it's going a little bit. And I think so 2024, the entire year, I think I made about $2,000. Now, in comparison to what I sell on TpT, it's really not much going on there. Like it's not a great amount of money. But, I guess I look back at the last year and I go, okay, well, how much time did I really put into my WooCommerce shop? I didn't put like a crazy amount of time or money into it. So I suppose $2,000 is nothing to be sniffed at. So I kind of look at it in a positive way, but it's not been some really great backup to TpT financially. But yeah, still kind of cool, I guess. Anyways, like I said, I don't put a lot of time and effort into my shop. And if I did, that would be great. If I was putting a lot more pins out into the world and blog posts with links, and I was sending emails to my email list about it or running ads, like I could certainly grow my shop a lot faster if I wanted to, and I'm not. So that's kind of on me. So, it depends how much effort you put in, basically. But I think I still on some level, I resent it, and on some level, it's really hard. But I think I do feel like I'm glad I have that little backup, just that little extra bit of money coming in, or that little, this is something that I own, this is something that's mine, this is something that isn't, reliant on someone else. It feels with this business like you're just always reliant on other people all the time, reliant on TpT or a social media platform, like whether it's the fear of TikTok being shut down or your Instagram account being hacked or whatever. Like there's just always, it just feels like it's so risky. You're always on this borrowed land, renting things all the time. And when you have your own website and blog and email list, it's like it just finally feels like you have something that's yours. So yeah, kind of good, I guess, in that sense. So that's the big one, starting your own website shop. It's a bit of an undertaking. And then the other thing that I will talk about in this episode is when you're moving beyond, just putting your resources somewhere, and whether you would be interested in kind of a more supporting teachers kind of style of doing things. And so that is the course membership route. Now, if you do a membership in the traditional TpT sense, it kind of is a bit like just throwing your resources somewhere, because a lot of the time people just get their entire store and then upload it into this, library or this catalog for members to access. It's like, hey, you get access to my whole TpT store if you join this membership. So I guess that's kind of the same. But there is also, I think, an expectation with memberships that you provide something beyond just resources. And so a lot of people with memberships have like Facebook groups that they run, or they offer PD sessions and basically supporting teachers to teach the concepts, that kind of thing. There's a little bit more to entice people if you're going to join a membership. So that's something, if you like the idea of that, if you feel like you're an expert in your niche and you're like, I kind of wouldn't mind the idea of also helping these teachers beyond just making a resource, a membership can be really, really cool. I don't personally have any memberships, not even for sellers or anything like that. That's because, and this is the downside I thought I'd share, is that there is that pretty much ongoing workload involved in it. It's because, I guess in terms of like taking time off, or if something was going on in your life, you really do have to show up for these people because they're paying like a monthly fee. And so if you've promised you're going to do some webinar or Zoom meeting or provide some support or something, you kind of feel like you have to show up and do that. And even if you don't do those kind of live sort of things, there's, dealing with members when they want to join or cancel, or and they've got these queries for you and they're sending emails and they're having problems downloading things, that you've kind of got to be there to support them. So unless you're going to hire that out, that can be quite an undertaking. A bit more of a passive option would be to create a course, because that is where you're putting in a lot of time up front to create the course. And then you've obviously got to do these launches, but then in certain months when you're not launching the course or doing any updates to it, it's, there's something you don't really have to do anything to, which is kind of cool. Courses are really a little bit like TpT in that kind of passive nature.
Thank you for listening to this episode
evergreen,
of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're
or
enjoying the show,
once you've
please feel
created
free
it,
to
you're just going
rate,
to keep making
subscribe,
money
and
from it. It's really
review
cool.
on your preferred
I can speak to
podcast
courses
listening
because I have
platform.
made
We really
a fair
appreciate
few
that
with
effort.
those, but they're
Come
all
back
for
for more
sellers. So,
actionable tips
you know,
and helpful
if you're
wisdom
thinking
in
about
the
making a
next
course for
episode
teachers,
with
that's
your
going to be
host,
different,
Alex.
obviously. But
Until then.
Promise is kind of the same. You are creating content, videos and text lessons and Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. You're supporting them. You just, you might be teaching about the science of reading and I'm teaching about making previews, whatever. So, the topic's a little bit different. But course-wise, it's one of my favorite parts of my business is having the courses and stuff for TpT sellers. I quite like helping people. I found like a lot of joy in that. And you can find joy in creating a TpT resource. Don't get me wrong. You know that it's reaching all these people, but it does feel a bit like you're removed from it and you don't often have that interaction with people. But when you do create a course and you have these like members, or same with a membership, you have this kind of connection with people and you're like helping and coaching and supporting. So if you're really into that, and if you're a teacher, presumably you might be, then it's going to be really kind of fulfilling. So that's a really great avenue to go down. If there is interest, I'm always happy to do a specific episode on that. So I could, I did the episode on selling my website. I could do an episode on selling courses. If you have a lot of questions about how to make a course, how to launch a course, all that, I would be happy to do that. I just have never done one after all these years of having courses because I just wasn't sure if there was even a need for it. I didn't know if there were many people out there listening to the podcast that want to start a course. I didn't really want to kind of waste anyone's time. But if there's a need, I will happily do it. So send me an email or an Instagram message or write in the Facebook group or somehow contact me and say, hey, yeah, I would love an episode about courses. Here are the questions I have, and I'd be happy to do it. So let me know. But anyway, I have to wrap up this episode. The car is pulling into the driveway. My husband and Lily are back from their swim lesson. And so if we don't want to hear all the squeals of Lily in the background, I am going to have to finish recording. This is, parenting while you're in a business. Yeah, this is it. But anyway, I really kind of hope this has helped in some way. This is a pretty basic episode and very quite broad. It's not like too specific to any of the things I talked about. And I'm happy to dive more into them if you want to. I guess I just felt like I hadn't really talked about diversifying and I kind of wanted to lay out some of the options for you, give you something to think about. And if you're ready for it, certainly something that makes you feel a bit more secure in your business, especially if you create a successful course or membership or something, more than just selling on another marketplace, that should something happen to TpT, you've got this whole other thing going on that can financially support you, which is really, really cool. But anyway, yeah, let me know what questions you have, post in the Facebook group or message me on Instagram. If you have more questions about diversifying or courses, whatever, I'm happy to do more episodes. But I hope that you have a terrific day.